welcome our workshop leader, Jay Leroy. Jay is an international school physical and health educator with experience spanning 4 countries over the past 14 years. Jay grew up in Ontario, Canada, where he was a collegiate football athlete and semi-pro lacrosse player. Amazing. Trained in Australia, Jay began his teaching career in primary classrooms of Southeast London in the UK, where he quickly realized his passion for educating through the specialization of physical and health education. His most recent focus is on promoting conceptual inquiry in IB physical and health education. Without further ado, over to Jay to get us started.
All right, guys. Well, welcome everybody here. Like I mentioned briefly, in the beginning, a little bit intimidated by the experience in the room. This is one of my first times doing something like this. I just want to say I don't really consider myself an expert, but I just consider myself to be experienced. I just want to go through some stuff today that has helped me throughout my career, some of the things I've learned, some of the little tricks into designing some aligned conceptual assessment. So here's the session breakdown. There's the intros done. We're gonna present a couple units. This is not a unit planning session, but we're gonna start there. We're gonna talk about conceptual project-based approach that I've been working towards recently in my career. We're gonna talk a little bit about criteria and how it aligns with inquiry. And like again, I said, there's a lot of experience in this room, so hopefully I won't have to do a whole lot of reviewing about concepts, global context, and all that stuff. We'll hit on some command terms and the understanding and the importance of those. I'm really curious, actually, to see how we all approach formative assessment in PE, because that's been a big topic of interest at the schools that I've been working at recently. Then we are going to get a head start on this whole collaborative, and we are going to get into some grasp planning, some collaborative planning, with all the people in the room, and then we'll just finish off with some Q&A. There will be some Q&A throughout these sessions, so please, take part and get some stuff in the chat. We'll be using the chat a lot, and Sitlali will let me know what's going on in the chat while we're going through. So please be active in there, and I'll have it up on my screen as well so I can see what you guys are talking about. So as far as unit planning goes, guys, the reason I'm not going through this is because Toddle has some wonderful resources on unit planning available to you. I believe this has been dropped in the chat. We won't go too far into rubric design either, because Toddle has loads of stuff that you can look at regarding that as well. Building rubrics for efficient and authentic assessment is on the next side there, Sitlali. Yeah, and that will be dropped in the chat as well. Loads of resources for you guys with Toddle. The reason Toddle has asked me to do this is because I have taken part in some of the unit planning on Toddle. So if any of you guys are using Toddle at the moment on the MYP platform, I've actually built out all the units that are existing there. Most of the stuff that you see today will be available in those units. You also have access, I believe, is it on this slide? Have we given access to the Padlet already? Where this slideshow is available to you. Most images will have clickable links where you can borrow these resources. I give you permission. And again, I think Chad just kind of mentioned, I should mention that, I'm just here to share what I do. I'm not saying that it is all the exact correct thing to do, but it's just stuff that's worked for me. So without further ado, I just want to get a little bit of interaction here. My initial idea was to use some emojis, and it looks like the chat in the chat, we're able to use some emojis to do just a little kind of vote. Not necessarily a poll, but I'm interested in what you guys would like to hear about. I'm going to model this whole session around either a fitness unit or a net games unit. So if you want to learn about fitness or hear a little bit about the fitness unit that I teach, go ahead, put it in a muscle, or you can just write in fitness in the chat. If you'd like to hear about a net games unit that I've designed out, please go for the tennis ball or tennis racket. So let's just see what people are interested in hearing about. I see some fitness already. Oh, okay. We got some
here come the net games.
coming back. The net games are coming. So it's 3-1 at the
All
moment.
right, 3-1.
Fitness. Okay, here we go.
Net games. 4-2.
Back to fitness. How many are we here?
We've got about 11, I believe. 14. What is it? Oh,
20. Okay. Looks like it's about
minus,
tied now, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are we looking at? What do you think?
Or like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it looks like net games is going to be a slight winner there.
Great. Well, we'll move on for the sake of time, and we'll go with net games. Okay. So, guys, I always make these unit posters for all my units. It's great for kids to have a one-stop shop with all the unit information. You can see that my net games unit for MYP2, we talking about pickleball and tennis. Now, the reason I use 2 sports to approach this is because we use one for a formative cycle, and then we move into another sport for the summative cycle. The name of this unit is Proper Practice Makes Progress. We talk about the kind of old idea of practice makes perfect and how that doesn't really align with what we want kids to understand these days. There is no perfect, and we really want to just talk about the adventure and the journey of progressing in these skills. As we know, net games, a lot of motor skills in net games, implements, and all sorts of things. Not all kids are familiar with these things. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about how we kind of approach that. So the inquiry statement, proper form improves function. So you can see inside that we have our concepts of form and function. Some of the questions we'll be talking about: why is form important? Did you use the correct form? What skills do you use? ATLs we're talking about here are self-management. The whole idea of this unit is that kids are going to create plans to improve towards the summative. Okay. I usually really focus on 2 concepts with one kind of in the background. The refinement is in the background, but it obviously ties in to practice, right? At the bottom there, I outline my assessment, and you can see that I have all 4 criterion here. Okay. My philosophy is that the criterion have been created to be assessed together. I don't do a whole lot of standalone A's, B's, C's, and D's on their own. I like to tie them all together in my units. And as a result, most of my units end up being minimum 8 weeks and usually 12. Just to get a really good formative and summative process. So what would happen here is we'd start with pickleball and we'd introduce some of the skills. The formative assessment would be something like just asking the kids, hey, what part of this weird pickleball, ping pong, tennis-y game are you not so good at the moment? All right, they'd choose something and they'd find an exercise that would help them, or a drill or a game that would help them improve in their chosen skill for pickleball. Hey, I'm not quite fast enough on the court. I'm going to improve my agility. I'm going to get on the agility ladder. The formative one is really just them choosing, exploring, looking for it. Nothing really concrete is done in the formative. As you'll see later, I like to use a lot of picture and video for evidence. When we move out of the pickleball unit, you'd be about like 5-6 weeks for that, 4 minimum. We move into tennis, and this is where things get a little bit tighter. I prescribe this skill in this one. We say we're all going to go for a forehand. What I'll do is I'll drop kids on the line and I'll ask them to do a forehand, what they understand to be a forehand, without even teaching anything at the beginning. I'll film them to get a diagnostic starting point, and then what they will do is they will assess their own idea. I will teach the proper form of a forehand, and then I'll allow them to go and break down their own video. They will find out what aspect of the forehand that they need to improve on, and then progress and build a plan to improve. Initially, we had 3 exercises or drills or games that they would choose. I've recently minimized that to just 1. I realized that giving too much work to the kids is obviously something that people are worried about around the world. That criterion A, why are the kids on laptops so often, and why are they writing too much and things like that. So I realized that I could get all the evidence I needed from 1 well explained exercise. I'll show you the template of that later. We're going to move a little bit further. We'll go to the next slide, and I'll just talk to you guys a little bit about the conceptual approach that I'm sure most of us are very aware of. These are the key concept posters, and I believe that's going to be dropped into the chat. I use these in my class. They're great. Toddle has great resources, great visuals. So go ahead and access those, and you can use those in your classrooms as well, or in your gyms. Actually, I'm actually kind of curious, just give a thumbs up or a yes or no. How many people use a classroom in their PE program? This is something that just came up to the top of my head just now, because not all people use classrooms all the time. So, that's good. Good. Loads. Good. That's nice. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the conceptual based approach and why it's important, okay? We know that the global context is why are we exploring this? The concepts are what, and the ATLs are how the students are going to gain understanding about the why. All right, so we all know about that. I'm going to move on from that. The most important thing about when you take the conceptual approach is that you understand that your planning, your written, taught, and assessed curriculum need to be aligned conceptually. If we miss any of those steps, what's going to happen is there's a disconnect in the understanding for the students. Okay. Here I state that we want to avoid performance-based rubric descriptors outside of criterion C, right? This is difficult. I know that people struggle with this. We get into creating kind of tick lists in our rubrics rather than separating them into our task descriptors, our task instructions versus our rubrics, okay? So I'm going to show you guys examples of this stuff later on. When we focus on the concept comprehension, we get what we call, where am I here? Sorry, I got lost a little bit. Focus on the comprehension, understanding, not only skills. So I think some things that we get stuck into is really just, if going back to the forehand example, we are looking at performance of the skill, right? Now, parents, students, they get really nervous when they say, okay, I'm really bad at tennis. How am I going to do well on this unit if I have never played tennis before versus Joey or Johnny or Sally who take tennis lessons every day? All right. We go back to saying, well, the idea is that we want to understand how to improve our form. Okay. The most important thing that I want out of that tennis unit is kids to understand how to improve form of any given skill and the progress aspect, not the fact that they have to hit a perfect tennis forehand by the end of the unit. All right. So again, there I just mentioned at the bottom, we avoid checklists and rubrics, and you can include checklists, but they should be in your task instructions rather than in your rubrics, because we want the rubrics to be able to be conceptually understood rather than big, long tick lists of things that we could do, because some people's rubrics can get a little bit out of control and they get really big, so they're not very student friendly. Great, so let's just go to our first little activity here, okay? Next slide, there we go. So do you align your written, taught, and assessed curriculum conceptually? That's the big question here. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pull up an existing unit plan, a lesson plan, and an assessment. That's kind of where your written things go. And I want to see if you can see a clear conceptual connection across the experiences, okay? Have we planned, taught, and assessed consistently, conceptually, or do we kind of miss a step here and there? Do you use conceptual vocabulary and language throughout? Will the kids understand the conceptual focus of the unit, or will they simply learn a checklist of skills? Conceptual understanding allows for transfer and connection across subjects. Can you see this being possible in what you have existing now? All right, so what our support here is going to do is they're going to drop you into, I guess we should probably go 4 or 5 with the numbers here. So I think we can go into breakout rooms of 4 or 5. And I just want you to have a chat with someone in your breakout room. Hopefully right now you're pulling up a unit plan or a lesson and an assessment that you can use to explain to your group and share how you align yours or not, wherever you find the gaps, how you align your stuff conceptually. So let's go ahead and bump into breakout rooms, and you can use these prompts on the slides as your discussion prompts. Yep.
All right, so we will drop you into those groups, and as you see the invite come up, please join that group.
I bumped into a room with a couple of guys that shared some really great stuff about how they align their conceptual ideas across their planning, taught, and assessed curriculum. We had a good little chat about assessment briefly. I hope your chats went well, and maybe you already learned something that you want to use, a new strategy or something in your own practice. So here's a little cheat sheet for you. I like to give kids a conceptual application sheet. Most of the time I use these when they are completing reflections, because when I structure reflections, I always make them super conceptually focused. So for our fitness unit there, you see like change, development, adaptation. It's not necessarily the definition of those concepts, it's how they apply to that unit and that content. Okay. And then for the reason I asked you guys to choose one is the tennis one there. You can see we use form and function. And this is just when we talk about form, we're talking about the steps to success of a forehand. And what in the assessment, they choose one aspect of it to improve. And their plan is using their knowledge of fitness components, muscles, body parts, and applying them. I talked to Chris about this, applying them to their plan. So what we do is we get the criterion A and B within one piece, rather than kind of separating them. So this is something you could use if you want to click on these in the slideshow. You can steal them, or you can just take that kind of concept of conceptual application sheets and put it into your own practice. I'm going to start moving on because I really do want to have time for a big collaboration at the end. We have any questions? Just 1 or 2 from the chat here. Is any questions with about anything that I've presented so far? It's pretty straightforward, I believe. Criterion B and C combined. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'll talk about that. Does anyone have any?
Right now, the only question that's come up so far is when you talked about the 8 to 12 week units, about how many lessons is that per week that you kind of move through?
So we're very lucky here I'm at Chadwick International School in South Korea, and we have like 120% more contact than the average PE program. So I get my kids 2 or 3 75-minute blocks a week, which is awesome. Right?
Yeah.
Your face there, Chris. You're on the first
Wow.
one. I see there. It's nice, hey? And I know that thinking about that over 12 weeks, that's just so much time. And the big part that I love about that is what me and actually Chris spoke about, is that we want to get kids off their butts, right? But that amount of time allows me to still get them off their butts every single class and start in the classroom to focus, right? So I know that's something that I'm very lucky to have. What's the average time that you guys have? Pop it in the chat. Pop it in the chat. How much contact do you get a week? That's not bad. 52. That's what I was on that at my last school. 2 lessons, 1 hour a week. Ooh, that's tough. That's not very much time at all, is it, Chris? 245s a week, 53 times. That's usually what I have been seeing, is about 50 minutes 2 to 3 times a week. We're on an 8-day cycle, so it goes, I'll see them twice one week and 3 times the next week. So cool. So that 12-week model might be really helpful for those people who don't have much contact time, right? I think the reason that's it goes in 6 and 12s is because the PYP schedule is usually a 6-week cycle, right, for their inquiry projects. Okay, we're gonna move on. We'll keep moving here. Yeah, man, we got a boogie here. Okay, so we all know what our assessment criteria is. Criterion A, knowing and understanding. B, C, and D. Awesome. Next slide there, Lily, please. Okay, I just want to briefly talk to you about how my philosophy works with assessment. I immediately, when I approached the MYP and I saw that we have these 4 criterion that align perfectly with a learning inquiry cycle, right? So I was always like, why would we ever assess something in a standalone situation when we have the opportunity to include the full learning cycle where we can actually teach kids how to learn, right? Or how to inquire into these big ideas. It'll support your conceptual understanding as well. So you're always going to have knowledge that you need in order to create a plan and then perform that plan. And we always want to look at how well that process went so we can come back to it again, right? So what I do in all of my units is I assess all 4 criterion every assessment opportunity that I have. Now, some of those things could be a little bit standalone, that they're all going to be connected together. So back to my net games idea is we talked about a forehand, all right? The knowledge-based aspect is what fitness components are used while they're performing a forehand. What are the 4 to 5 steps that they need to complete a forehand? Do they know what those are, right? Ready position, approach, backswing, contact, follow through, all right? And what muscles are being used when they are performing that skill, right? They use all that information when they build their plan, where they find their game, their drill, or their modified, something or other that's going to help them train for one specific aspect. All of that information is included in their plan. So I don't have to assess them separately with a criterion A small short test or anything like that, right? Are we going to cover every muscle in the body? No, but that's not the important thing, right? It's important for them to apply muscles, fitness components, and their knowledge of a forehand into an actual structured process, right? We train for about 4 weeks with their, obviously I give them some other activities as well, but every class will be focusing using their plan. They'll train friends, we'll rotate, they'll do some coach client stuff, not assessed, just them using their plans in class to improve and also sharing with their classmates. At the end, we'll throw them on the line again, and I'll chuck some tennis balls at them, and we will film that, and we will see how they have progressed. All right. My criterion C for the forehand is very basic level, right? So when they go into their reflection, it's basically a self-assessment of their progress over the unit. So right there in that unit, we have A, B, C, and D assessments. Not every single descriptor, but most of them. Okay, and I'll show you guys what that looks like a little bit later on. That's what I have posted in my classroom, just to get kids to understand that we're always doing all of the criterion in all of our cycles. Let's move on to talk a little bit about command terms. So this is a lovely resource. Again, Toddle's loads of great resources that you can use in your classroom. I think that's going to be dropped into the chat. The next one is all the command terms for PE. And this is what the PE poster looks like. Next slide, please. So the command terms are, right, the guiding vocabulary for your assessment judgment, right? They must be aligned, again, just like your conceptual understanding. They must be aligned in your planning, instruction, and assessment. One big disconnect that I saw when I was a head of department at my last school was that we weren't using the vocabulary while we were teaching the kids, and it wasn't in our planning. So we'd throw them this rubric at the end of the day that they had to understand the command terms, but we weren't unpacking the command terms throughout the teaching process. If you think about that and you just say that out loud, you go, wow, like what a disconnect. How are they possibly going to know why they've scored what they've scored if they don't understand the command terms clearly, right? I've spoken to teachers across other subjects that were like, wow, we don't really do that either. We get really content focused and thinking about, again, things like muscles, you know, all these different things. But we really don't talk to the kids about why command terms are important, okay? So obviously they're required for student understanding and current achievement and next steps, right? So if we're scoring 3s and 4s, we got to know what the difference is between describe and explain and justify and things like that, all right? It's also very important to give your feedback using the command terms, okay? I like to provide command term definitions on task sheets. And I also do mini sessions here and there just to make sure that we're all on the same page and understanding what I'm asking the kids to do and how they're going to be assessed, right? And the command terms drive all of that. Let's go to the next slide, please. I think I'd like to stay in the same groups just to kind of promote a bit more comfortable communication. Pull up or have an assessment task in mind and a rubric. And I want to see that if your assessment task and actual rubric are aligned in their vocabulary that they use, right? So I think the big thing is we just want to see if there is a little bit of a disconnect and how we can tighten that up. If you have the slides open and you want to access some of the criterion, so Lily, can we open just maybe an MYP1 link here? Just really quick.
Even I don't know if Chad is there. Can you put that link?
Oh, is that Chad that's on there? I thought you had it. Can we open the MYP1 link there just on the screen?
Got it.
Is it functioning? I think, yeah, okay. So there you go. If you have access to that, this is just a template that I use. Sometimes I use the actual task descriptors and the task specific clarifications side by side. And sometimes I don't even include the descriptors, the IB descriptors. So there's 2 different ways. These are great templates if you want to use them. All 3 years are there, all 4 for each MYP 1, 2, and 3. Pretty cool. You can give this to kids as well if you ever want to do an activity where they create their own task-specific clarifications. So I just wanted to show you that real quick. That's fine. Thanks for that. Cool. Also down here are some examples of my assessments and how they look. Can we open the Net Games one? Yeah, right there. Cool. So here's an example of the Net Games assessment. Like I said, I've made it down, put it down to 1. Their task here is an A and B combined, right? So here is their task instructions, and you can see I've actually aligned them with the concepts that each part of this instruction aligns with. So how is the exercise performed? We're talking about the form of the exercise. How is it developing their forehand? How is it helping to improve their form and function, etc. Can we go back out and show an example of a completed piece of work? So here's an example of a high flyer, 7 and an 8. Okay, so in the rubric, if we scroll down to the rubric real quick there, Chad, I'd like to see what's in the criterion B command terms. And I think this is one that people get confused about sometimes. You can see that that student has created something there, right? It's just at the bottom. So there's my A, traffic lights. I love traffic lighting. We'll talk about that next. All right, looks like everybody is back. Sorry to cut your conversation short, but I am guilty of this quite often. I've definitely put too much on the slides here and I'm talking too long. So we're gonna boogie forward to one of the big. All right, welcome back. We're gonna move forward because again, I am talking way too long and I've packed way too much on these slides. You guys all have access to these slides if you'd like to flip through some of the next bits, but this is an important thing that we talked about in my room, is talking about command terms and how translating command terms into your home language is very helpful for the wider community. I do want to just hear about a little bit about how people collect formative data. Can you just pop that in the chat? What's your strategies for collecting formative data in your teaching? think the key word there is some quick ways, right? I think a lot of people talk about in PE, we're always giving formative feedback, right? Verbally. But how are there ways that you can provide evidence of that? Because that's one thing that if you ever have an administrator or a coordinator who is pretty eager, they want to see how you have made judgments, right?
Yeah. And it looks like we've got several things. We've got a couple of recorded videos, video evidence, some performance. We've got observation, quizzes. Looks like anecdotal notes from those observations. Good. So yeah, a lot of observation and quizzing and some digital products. Good. Digital works.
Good.
Good. So got a good range of strategies, tools there that we're using.
Great. So we want to click onto the next slide there, and I'll just, sounds like we're all in the same boat. I take way too much video, but it's never too much because I'm always going to have a chance to go back and look at formative evidence to guide my summative judgments, right? We're going to click through this stuff really quick, guys. If you are interested in taking a look at some of the things that I do in class and some of my videos, my YouTube channel is linked to these slides, and also a bunch of examples of videos are there at the moment. So if we can just go, there's my word wall, celebrating evidence. I always put pictures up of the kids, and it makes them feel really cool, and they get to look at each other from other classes. There's a video of a pickleball. We don't need to play that. We'll just go through, just click through these slides right now. There's some resistance training that I do in my fitness. We have a really nice fitness room. There's some stuff of diversified tennis lesson, and our yoga and flexibility is on the next slide. Just some pictures of doing our flexibility testing and a summative example of a yoga vinyasa flow with my lovely grade 7s. I've included a resource on here, guys. If you're not part of Toddle right now, this is some exit ticket ideas that will give you concrete evidence of formative achievement. We'll click through these. You can have these. Like I said, these are included in the Toddle platform, but I put them on here for you guys as well. And let's just get right to slide 46, and we will talk about some grasp planning. I'm sure many of you guys have been to workshops where you have done some grasp planning, but what I did want to do to get you guys a head start on the assessment submission is I'd like to just in small groups here, we'll complete a quick grasp planning tool. I have a template for you guys to fill out. If one of you in the group could at least have it up or be talking about it, we would like something to be produced out of this next kind of 20 minutes so we can pop it on the Padlet. It doesn't have to be something amazingly pristine. It's just to get people together and start talking. I am going to give you guys a couple of very specific guidelines. I want us to focus on creative movement, because I believe that that's one of the spots where some of us don't feel super comfortable. I know some people don't even teach creative movement in their PE programs, but it should be a part of the overall experience from 1 to 5. I would like you to focus on thinking of a criterion A, creative movement assessment. But like we talked about in my groups, I would like you also to have an idea of how your B, C, and D are going to be connected to that. Okay, so again, we're going to think about creative movement. If a global context helps you, let's think about personal and cultural expression, but that's not super important at the moment. We're going to do a grasp plan using the template. Creative movement, criterion A, with the thought in mind of linking a B, C, and D. And if you want to include an A and B together, no worries. Okay, the grasp template is on the next slide. And it's got some prompts in there. Okay, what's the goal of this assessment? What role are you taking in the assessment? What is the audience? Okay, what's the situation? Is there going to be a product performance, and what is the purpose? And then what are the standards or criteria for success? Now, if you have something existing that you want to share with the group and we can build it out, then let's go for that. This is one of the bigger set parts of the session. So I think instead of the initial time, we'll go for about 15 minutes. Is that all right? Is that cool, Chad? Chad, you got the time, or is
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll keep track of the time.
Yeah, let's do
So
15 minutes instead, and then we'll wrap things
yeah,
up. Yeah, we're a bit behind here. My bad.
we're good.
All right, let's. Great. Wow. Okay, so whirlwind. If someone from your group could just go on to the Padlet and just briefly just summarize the chat that you had. A big chat that we had was a lot of people, a lot of teachers were worried about how criterion A is just a lot of writing, and everyone's like, oh, we don't want kids to write anymore. I had a good chat with Chris about how we can pull criterion A knowledge out of existing work. The big connections are criterion B and criterion D. Okay, there's no way that your students can create a plan to do something that you've taught them using the skills without using their knowledge and understanding. Okay, so the big thing is go back and look at it. If you're doing it, why not assess it? Right? If their knowledge and understanding exists in their plan or their reflection, don't make them go back and do another piece of writing or another assessment. Take that information, find how to pull criterion A out of those things. Then essentially, we only have to do B, C, and D activities or products, right? Because the A exists through them all. Now, the IB will want you, you can't use a criterion C as a proof of A, because it does say it needs to be something kind of written or on paper or some sort of physical product, right? So that was just my suggestion. When looking at B and D, you're always going to use A. Chad, are we over time already? Or what's going on? What's our time like?
I think we have about
Yeah.
25 minutes.
Yeah, actually we are 8:30 to 10:05, right? We're supposed to be finished about 10, right? 90 minutes was what we had. And
Okay.
so yeah, we're a little bit over right now.
Okay, I'm getting confused because for me, I got mine finishes at midnight. On the screen here, we got 9 a.m. and then I think you got the official 10 a.m. Okay, guys.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I apologize if this seemed kind of rushed. I hope you had really great conversations in your breakout rooms. Ours got so good that I didn't get a chance to move around. But what I would like you to do, like I said, if you guys could just access the Padlet here and just quickly write down a little bit of the conversation that you had around your grasp planning. And again, please access this slide deck and use any and all of the resources that you want, okay? My personal information is on here as well. If you ever want to contact me to just, like I said, shoot the breeze, or if you ever want to talk about assessment and how you can include your criterion A or your conceptual understanding or anything around command terms, stuff like that. Or if you just want to maybe link up for some collabs, please feel free to contact me.
Yeah, Jay, maybe put that in the chat for us. Some of that contact information there to be clear. So I do want to thank each of you for making today so exciting and for your enthusiastic participation. If you have any questions about today's event, you can please send us an email on events@toddleapp.com. Jay, a very big special thank you so much for all of your wisdom and enthusiasm. This has been truly an amazing workshop with lots of great content knowledge and practical stuff that we can apply. And hoping everyone in the crowd is now going back much richer and feeling more prepared to power up their MYP assessments. And I especially think, there was a lot of schools that were kind of new to grasp, especially in my my session. So I think having them go through that process is going to be a very beneficial thing for their future of the program. So.
Yeah, that's
all
great.
right.
I hope you guys enjoyed it and that you found some little bit of information. We had a lot of different experience levels here, people at different points in their adventure with the MYP, but I think there's a little bit for everyone in that bit. And thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
Right.
Thanks a lot.
We'll now take a break, and if you are unable to attend the last keynote and have to leave us today, please take a minute to complete the short survey that's been in the chat. As educators ourselves, we really value any feedback you can share with us. Once we're back from the break, one of Toddle's co-founders, Ms. Bob, will give us a full demonstration of the Toddle platform. Then we'll hear from our final keynote from a current head of school, Rizwan Khan. Riz is here today to support us in unlocking pathways to student agency by focusing on student voice, choice, and ownership when designing our NYP assessments. The link to this closing has been put into the chat. Once again, thank you for joining us at the NYP assessment meetup. I'm hoping everyone in the crowd is now going back much richer and feeling more prepared to write their own assessment task of great quality in their NYP subject areas. We hope to see you in the Facebook community in the near future or back here for another exciting event soon. I'll be available here to answer any questions and monitor the chat in case anyone has for about the next 15 minutes. We'll see you after the break for that demonstration. Thank you. Have a great day.